morning, everybody, and thanks very much for being early this morning. We're going to get started in about a minute or so, just waiting for a few more people to come through. But before we do that, I just want to make sure that you can actually see my screen and you can hear my voice. So could I ask you to do me a big favor, please? If you can see my screen and you can hear my voice, just type into the question box yes, or just raise a little hand there on the chat box, just so I can know that. And that way I can know that you can see my screen. Okay, great. Thanks very much. So, hi everybody. This is Rudy Jensen here. I'm the head coach here at ACOA and also the best-selling author of the Highly Profitable Accountant. So, we run a black belt coaching program exclusively for accountants who are determined to make a change in their practices and in their lives. Now, I'm really excited about today's session. We're going to go deep into how you can price your practice for profits, focus your time on A-plus clients, and also get outsourcing right for the first time around. So before we get started, I call these the 3 gets. So just to make 100% sure you're ready to get the most out of our time together. So number 1 is get the tools you're going to need. So you're going to need something to write on, something to write with, something to drink. Number 2, get rid of anything that might distract you. So, your mobile phone, switch it off, put it on silent, lock your door. If you've got a PA, let your PA hold your calls. In other words, give yourself the same gift that you give to your clients every week, which is some uninterrupted time focused on you and your practice, your business, instead of the world and its needs. And then the third one is get yourself ready. So you see, I know that the information I have for you could be a pivot point. It could dramatically change your practice. And the only thing that will stop that today is how you show up here. I got up early this morning, went for a walk, got a strong coffee next to me, some water, and I really want to give you my A game. And I guarantee that if you bring your A game to this interactive presentation this morning, you will get the most out of this today as well. So let me ask you just one quick question. What feeling or emotion can you bring to today? In other words, we're going to be together for the next about 90 minutes. And what's one emotion that if you brought it to the table today would give you the most joy, fire in your belly, value out of this time together? So what's the one feeling that you might want to bring to this? I'd love to know. Do you want to bring curiosity, passion, intensity, intrigue? What is your word? I'd love you to type into the question box or your chat box there. Just type that for me. What is the one emotion that you could bring to the table today? Okay, fantastic. Paul says they're open-minded. Paul, that is absolutely the best approach to have to the stuff that I'm sharing with you today. Jack says curious. Jonathan says in a rush. Jonathan, I do appreciate that. That's probably the emotion you want to leave outside of this presentation, because we go through it one step at a time and you'll gain the most from it. Okay, fantastic. There's a few there, so let's move on to the next slide then. Okay, so briefly a bit about my journey. So as you see that image on the screen there, that's pretty much how I'm sitting exactly right now, on my chair by my desk with that bookshelf behind me. So my journey, I was born in South Africa, qualified as a chartered accountant there, moved to the UK probably about 13 years ago. So I spent many years working both in practice and also out of practice. And my biggest thing, and the reason I became a chartered accountant was because I was looking for freedom. And for me, the word or the concept of freedom, sorry there, oh, there's my throat here. The concept of freedom is contained with two big things within it. One is having enough money, but the other one is having enough time. And I found that when I qualified as a chartered accountant, yes, my income went up dramatically, and so did my expenses. So I wasn't, although it had increased, I wasn't truly free in that way as such. But the other challenge I had was time. And I think for a lot of us, as accountants, freedom of time is a novel concept. And yet, my search over the last 13 years of how do we create that, it's yielded amazing results. And it's a process I teach my clients now to take them through building essentially a machine in their practice so that it releases them more and more from their practices. So I think I'm getting a bit carried away here, but that's been my journey of how do we create freedom? Is it really just a concept, a theoretical concept, or can we make it reality? Also, something else I did towards the end of last year, I wrote this book called The Highly Profitable Accountant. It's available on Amazon. As you can see on the screen there, towards the top of it with the stars there, it's got 28 customer reviews, and most of them are 5-star. And it really is about an accountant who goes through this journey of being highly stressed, and then how he goes step by step through this whole process of putting things in place to ultimately get him to a place of freedom where he was spending 6 months a year on his yacht in the Mediterranean. And it is quite possible. And most of this book is based on real-life case studies. So that's the book there. It is available on Amazon. And actually, we still have some books that we're giving away for free. We did a promotional offer. We've still got a few of those left. So if you log on to, if you haven't done this yet, to the highlyprofitableaccountant.com, you could get a book sent to you free of charge with my compliments. So that's there. Then just quickly to mention as well, the Highly Profitable Accountant Intensive, it's a seminar we're doing, and actually the next one happens to be next week, Wednesday, and it's taking place in Manchester. Again, if you're interested in coming along to that, where I'll spend time with you in a room live, going through this stuff, then that's the place to be, and that's the link for it there, highlyprofitableaccountant.com/intensive. You can get onto it there. Okay, so let's take a quick look or overview of our journey today and how the session is going to work. So firstly, a bit about my style. So I'm just seeing a question here from Paul from earlier. Did he take his kids with him? In this specific case, well, the real-life person who's doing this has older kids, and they're involved in his practice store. So I think some of it he took with him, but probably not all the time. They weren't definitely not young kids. So hey, let's get back to firstly about my style. I'm originally from South Africa, so I've definitely got a South African accent, and I'm quite convinced I'm never going to lose that. I talk really fast, so I'm going to ask you to listen very carefully and listen very fast. And also, I'm going to give you the straight truth. I've been working exclusively with accountants and accountancy practices for many years now. And I'm going to give you what works and what doesn't work. Just the straight facts. I'm not going to sugarcoat this stuff. I'll tell you what I've seen about how to grow your practice and leverage your time. So we're going to have a good time. This presentation should last around 90 minutes. And very much, I want this to be interactive. Not just because I think it's fun, but because there's a lot of stuff planned. And by being interactive, then I get to find out more about where you are at and what you need right now. And as we go through the presentation, if you engage, be interactive, type into the chat box, then I know exactly what you need. And I won't just give you the generic presentation. So let's make this interactive because it's going to help both of us, and frankly, it's a lot more fun. It's a bit strange for me sitting at my end here speaking to my laptop. And, I guess it's a bit strange for you in a way, sitting there by your computer, listening to your computer. So if we could make this conversation backwards and forwards, you and I think it'll be much more fun, help us both be much more engaged, and we're definitely going to get a much better outcome. So, as far as the content is today, really simple. Number one, I'm going to show you why you're working on a broken model in your practice and why this model is costing you thousands in profit every single year and a huge amount of your personal time every year. Number two, we're going to look at the 4 shifts you need to make to price your practice for profit. Number 3, we're going to look at the 3 biggest mistakes practices make when they outsource and how to avoid them. And then we're also going to look at how to save 80% of your and your team's time by grading your clients. So if I had to summarize, our goal today is what it says on the screen there. How to price your practice for profit, focus your time on A-plus clients, and get outsourcing right first time around. So I'm going to give you everything I've got in the time we've got today, and then at the end I'm going to show you a system where you can take all the material we cover and install it into your practice so you get results even faster. So I just want to check in, does that sound okay? Are we in the right room? Are we having the right conversation? So do me a favor, just type into the question box for me, sounds good or good to go, and that will let me know that you're ready. So just go ahead and type that into the chat box there. And remember, I can see all your names here, so I know who's engaged and who's not. Excellent, fantastic. All right, good to go. Brilliant. Okay, so I don't know what got you where you are today. I don't know your backstory yet, and I'd love to have that conversation at some stage. But regardless of what brought you here, let's start with a few questions. And then as we go through this, please type your answers into the chat box as we go through this. So the first question here is, what is the number 1 outcome you'd like to get from today's webinar? What's the number 1 thing that you've come to take away from here? So go ahead and type that in there. The number 1 outcome you want from today's webinar. What is your biggest reason for coming here? What's the outcome you want? Good. Okay. I'm sure somebody is still typing. Katrin, would be great to hear your answer as well. Dominic, for you too. Edith and Patrick, yours as well. Would be great to hear what your answers are. So Paul says, outsourcing, what to avoid doing. Need short-term resource help before take on employee. Absolutely, definitely the way to go. Edith, motivate poor performing staff or find alternatives. Okay, interesting one, that one. John says effective pricing. Great. Good, there's a few more answers there. Okay, fantastic. Great, so those are some of the answers there. So second question. And to be honest, we've only been friends for what, less than 10 minutes or whatever it is. And if we just met face to face, there's no ways I'd ask you this up front. But I really need to know where you're at so I can help you. What would you say is the biggest problem that you have right now in your practice? What is the biggest problem you have in your practice right now? So go ahead and type that in there. And it's something I mentioned in my book as well, and it's part of the model that I use, to say that there's there tends to be three main challenges in practices. If we look at a triangle, the one corner is team, so it's all around the team challenges. Another corner is all around the systems and McDonald's systemizing our practice. And the third corner is all around growth and systemizing how we do that. So, okay, Edith says plotting, project management, processes, onboarding, cash flow, profitability. Good. Okay, so in practice development, yep, good stuff. Okay, great. So this webinar today, I built this for my clients, probably about, must be about 2 years ago now. A client of mine came to me and said, Rudy, I want to build my practice as a machine that makes money, and then I want to extract myself from it. What's the fastest way to get there? Now that sounds like a very simple question. And you asked me this great question. But the problem with that question is that you can't really answer a deep question like that in 30 seconds. So I built this presentation, this webinar, to give him and everyone else the answers, or something pretty similar to what we're covering today. Now, we're not going to cover everything, but we're going to cover enough for you to know what the answers are. So we're going to be moving really fast, and if it is helpful to you at the end, I'd be happy to give you a recording of this presentation. So if it comes out, I'd be happy to give that to you. Would that be helpful to you? Just type in a yes. Just let me know if that would be helpful to you. Would the recording of the presentation be good? Okay, great. Oops. Okay, fantastic. Great. Okay, good. So let's get, and then also at the end, we'll get to the Q&A. Please just remind me to give you the recording, and I'll get that to you as soon as it's online. Okay, so let's get on to the serious questions here. As accountants, we are a pretty intelligent bunch on the whole, and we've invested years into studying. And on top of that, we're prepared to work really hard. We really do put in the blood, the sweat, and the tears. Yet, we're generally speaking either time poor and, or quite frankly, money poor. So, considering what we put in as opposed to what we get out, something is not adding up there. So, why do you think so many partners or owners of accounting practices are struggling so much? What do you reckon the reason might be? Go ahead and type in there, why do you think that partners, practice owners, are struggling so much? We're intelligent, we work damn hard, and yet we are not stinking rich and we don't have time freedom. Why are we struggling so much? I'd love to hear some of your viewpoints on that, so go ahead and type that in there for us. Not letting go, too busy working in it rather than on it, can't find the right staff, not enough of the right clients. Okay, great. So as a profession, we don't do enough to increase client perception. Yeah, there's a whole range of answers there. Good. Okay, I'm going to share with you my take on this. And this is Rudy's belief about how the world works. Okay, so we've got these 4 quadrants here. First letter is E, then S-E, B-O-I. So the E stands for employee or employed. So in life, I go to school, I go study, at some point I become an employee and I learn a skill. I learn how to do something with my hands. Become self-employed because I make that big jump, decide I can do this much better for myself, or I join a partnership, become self-employed. The next big jump is this one to business owner and finance investor. So let's just go through this. So the similarity between employee and self-employed is that at both of those stages, I'm the person who's doing it with my hands in front of my body. And as an employee, Now, whether I be an employee as a plumber or a bookkeeper, my hands are out in front of my body doing the job. At self-employed, my hands are still in front of my body doing the job. The next big jump, and this is where 90 jump from self-employed to business owner. What happens there is we take your hands from in front of your body and we tie it behind your back with you kicking and screaming, and we say, okay, now run this business the same or better than before with your hands tied behind your back. And this is a whole different skill set. You know, this is not you with your hands in front of your body. And the two things that you'll master in this quadrant, in the business owner quadrant, is staff and systems. So how do I get an A+ team behind me, and how do I get my systems absolutely sorted? Because when I master that, when I know how to do that, and I'm totally at ease in it, that is when I can make this final jump into the investor quadrant. At the investor quadrant, that is where I've essentially built this machine that can pretty much work without me. So I've got money coming in, and I actually have time freedom. And the investor quadrant is a place where I have choice. Plus, I've actually gained the body knowledge on how to do it. And I think over the years, I've only ever had one client who jumped into the investor quadrant and said to me, Rudy, I'm done. I'm going to travel the world. I'm retiring. I've had enough. And fair enough, this gentleman was in his early 70s at the time. But every single other client who's jumped into this investor quadrant, they enjoy that moment of, wow, I'm free. But then they start playing what I call Monopoly. They start acquiring other practices, other businesses. They invest, they start things from scratch because they know how to do it. And what a fantastic place to be in. So, in my book, I talk about the client of mine who went, literally, he came from this self-employed quadrant. Through this process, he moved to the business owner quadrant, and he's now in the investor quadrant. And with Paul, I started working, I don't know, probably 3-4 years ago. I can't even remember when it was. And at the time, his practice was turning over about $1.5 million. And he was the same challenges as the rest of us. He was locked into it, working in it, and was crazy, just busy, busy, busy all the time. Now that he's learned how to do it and he's jumped into the investor quadrant, I had a chat with him the other day, and he was saying that this year his accountancy practice is turning over £5 million because he's also now busy acquiring other practices, so that's very fast growth for him. And he's also invested in other businesses, which, well, it's also millions of turnover this year. And yes, there is a yacht, and he does spend a lot of time on it, and it's a fantastic life while still growing his businesses. So this whole question of why are we stuck, I believe it's because we're stuck in one of those quadrants. It might be self-employed towards business owner, but the knowledge, and it's not just book knowledge that I've read in the book, but it's actual body knowledge of how do I make the BO quadrant work? How do I absolutely get the right team behind me? How do I systemize 100% or almost 100% so that I can shift into the I quadrant? I think that's one of the biggest things that's holding us back, and on this treadmill of keep on going, going, going. So that's my take on life. So why is it so hard to make the shift from one quadrant to the next? And a lot of people say to me, well, it's all about mindset. You just need to think more positively. And I think that's part of the answer, sure, but that's definitely not the whole answer. So let me be really clear. Mindset is not the problem. Because if you have your own practice and you're feeling stuck, mindset is not the problem, and a positive attitude is not going to fix it. If you're on that treadmill, just having a positive attitude is not going to get you off the treadmill. And if you're feeling stuck and frustrated in your practice right now, stop beating yourself up, because it's not you. It's not your fault. Let me explain it this way. If I get into my car, it's nighttime, and I want to drive somewhere. But as I get in my car, I discover my steering wheel is broken. My brake's not working. The one light is out. and I start driving. I make a decision I'm actually going to drive this car. So I start driving down the road. I'm going to be hugely stressed. I'm going to be sweating. It's like, oh, I'm scared. I'm going to hate that experience. And what I really want to do is just jump out and run away because the car I'm driving is broken. It's as simple as that. And the same with your practice. If the model that you're driving your business in, if it's, I'm going to say if it's broken, then things just aren't going to work. You'll feel stressed, sweating, and you'll feel like you want to jump out and run away. It's not the mindset, it's the model. It's the model that your practice is built on. So model beats mindset every single time. And also, if someone has the wrong model and you get them revved up, you know what happens? They fail even faster. And I was speaking to an accountant just yesterday, and he was saying a couple of years ago they had a coach to help them, and the person came in, and the coach focused on sales. And actually, the foundations was wrong. And actually some of the team members, good team members, left as a result. So it was completely the wrong way around. They've got foundation blocks that are missing for them, and the focus was on the wrong thing. So it's very important to get the model right. And when you do that, like Paul, the world is your oyster. Okay, so here's the fact that I believe. You've been set up to fail. If you're frustrated with where you're at, you're working long hours, if your cash flow is tight, if your profits aren't where you need them to be, if you can't find the right team or the right clients, no one's deliberately trying to ruin our lives as practice owners. And the fact is that the system you either bought into or the training you've had from when you were very young in this industry and that you brought with you when you set up your own practice and you saw what everyone else does, it has flaws. And this limits you in three major areas. It limits your team, your growth, and it limits what I call your systems. And those three things ultimately dramatically limit the amount of money and the time you take from the practice. Okay, so let's look at these three signs of a broken model. And do me a favor, please write this down, because as we go through this, I'm going to ask you a question, and it would be useful if you've written it down so you can refer back to it. So, three signs of a broken model. Number one, you're always hoping for growth. There's no real growth strategy. Yes, we get some referrals, we do a bit of this, we do a bit of that, but a real written down tactical marketing plan in place for growth? Number two, your team are over-reliant on you. In other words, they need you there all the time, and you need them. Number three is what I call your systems are sweaty. Now obviously you've gotten your practice to where it is because you've got processes and systems in place, but things aren't properly systemized throughout, and everyone is working way too hard to get the job done. And what this usually means is that ultimately things fall back onto your shoulders to get it sorted. And the result of this is that you're seriously limiting your profit and massively increasing the time you spend in the business. So if you're hoping for growth and your team are over-reliant, then you are stuck. You're not moving anywhere, and it feels like there's nobody to help you. If your team are over-reliant and your systems are sweaty, then you are drowning. All this pressure on top of you and there's no way out. And then if your systems are sweaty and you're hoping for growth, you're grafting, working hard with a sweat and moving nowhere. So type in your chat box there, or the question box, which of those three things is costing you the most or giving you the most pain right now? So go ahead and type that in there. Which of those three things would you say is causing you the most grief right now? Some people say it's team, some say it's systems, and some say it's growth. Okay, system sweaty, over-reliance. So go ahead, it would be great to get a few more responses. I can see David, Dominic, Ishvak, John, Patrick, Praveen, Sam. It would be great to get your answers as well. It'd be interesting to know. Good. Team over reliance. Growth. Okay. Good stuff. So, those are the three things that are limiting you. So if we could flip those three things from hoping for growth to predictable growth, shift number 2, over-reliant team to self-reliant team, and shift number 3, from sweaty systems to scalable systems, that's when you will start building the machine around you that can work almost independently of you. So let's talk about the first shift, from hoping for growth to predictable growth. And more specifically, we're going to look at the 4 shifts you need to make to price your practice for profit. So in our, we call it the black belt program, we say for this corner of that triangle, there are 4 keys. And it's going back to basics, but making sure that every one of these keys are in place, and when they are, this corner will work without a doubt. So today we're looking at key 1, which is around pricing. Now, we haven't got the time today to cover key 2, which is all around marketing, generating leads, nurturing the prospects, and the whole process for that, referrals and introducers, and the process around that. Key 3, which is all around sales, how do we disqualify the bad or the weak prospects, how do we sell the value, and how do we increase the conversions. And key 4, when you're ready for it, then acquisitions and mergers is very useful to accelerate your growth, diversify your offering, and amplify returns. So today we're looking at this key 1, pricing. And we're going to look at the pricing on this bit here. So, okay. So let me tell you about one of my clients, Jeremy, and he's a managing partner in a 9-partner practice. And as he said, we've been brought up as accountants with a certain mindset on how to price and how we should not price. And making changes to pricing, it can be quite overwhelming. You feel like, you might be undercharging clients, but at the same time, you don't know how to increase your prices. And as Jeremy said, they became stressed out and almost paralyzed. They tried a few things half-heartedly over the years, but at the end of the day, they kept on coming back to their comfort zones. So to make real changes, the question is, what do we do? So I'm going to skip this one, just aware of the time I want to get through this, but pricing mindset is a big, big one. Now, if you don't get your pricing mindset right, then you're left behind in hourly billing, because that's the way it is. Potentially your profits are too low, or they're not as high as they could be. And interesting for me, something I've seen with my clients over the years, there's a benchmark that I've got of between 20 and 40%. And I say net profit before partners packages. If it is at 20% or less, we're doing something obviously wrong, and there's going to be some low-hanging fruit to increase that. If we're at 40%, we're on the right track. There are a few superstars at 50%, and then there are a very, very few at 60% plus that I've seen over the years. But I know the old rule was a third, a third, a third. For me, well, a third is going to be between that 20 and 40 range, but 40 is what we're aiming for as a first target. And then we get really, really streamlined. We go to 50% and 50% plus. So also, if you get your pricing right, essentially you're working hard and earning less than what you deserve, without a doubt. Now, if you do get your pricing mindset right, you become highly profitable. You know exactly how to price if you've got the tools for that and how to do it properly. And this would result in you earning more money, and therefore also, once you set things up, to be able to work less. So what would the right pricing mindset do for you and your practice? So go ahead and type that in there. And also, whilst you're busy typing, I'll just mention also another tool that we have for our Black Belt members is basically a spreadsheet that we've put together over the years. We've asked all our clients, what are all the services that you sell and how much do you charge for it? And we've taken the averages of all those prices. We've got this one big master spreadsheet now with all the services listed. It's got 3 columns for minimum price, average price, and maximum price. So we've taken all those prices and we said, okay, here's the minimum ones, here's the maximum ones, and here's the average. And what that does as a tool for our Black Belt members, because they can take that spreadsheet, that master spreadsheet, and there's a column for what are your prices, and there's another column for what you want your new prices to be. So as an almost instant ability to have an awareness of what other people charge, and therefore what are my charges, they're either on track or completely off track, and being able to shift it is a fantastic tool. So go ahead and type in there, what would the right pricing mindset do for you in your practice? Good. Increase profitability, yeah, make my life easier. Happy wife, absolutely, definitely, good stuff. Okay, so in order to get the right mindset to get pricing to work, there are 4 mindset shifts that you need to make. Now, I honestly believe this, and John also said ability to invest back into better systems. Absolutely, you've got the cash for it and you can put it back into where it's needed. So get back to the slide here. Absolutely, without a doubt, I do believe that 90% of accountants are too cheap. There's research been done that says that as an average, only 14% of people buy on price. And when you have clients who are super price conscious because they buy on price, those are the wrong clients. That comes back to this whole concept of, there's all kinds of cars for sale out there, and we don't all just drive the very cheapest model that's available, because it's not just about price. There's a whole range of other things that's involved. So the first mindset shift that's really important to make is stop thinking that your prospects are price orientated and start thinking that they're value orientated. I did some I did some work with a client literally a couple of weeks ago. He was doing a proposal for a prospect, and the proposal was going to work out to something like, I don't know, £8,000 or whatever it was. We sat down and we looked at the value that the client would get from the whole job and how he set out his proposal. And he changed things around to be so that it took much more into consideration the value that the prospect was getting from this. And he came back to me literally a few days ago and he said he's won the job, but his quote was closer to £20,000 on that specific job for exactly the same job. And it was essentially year in accounts, a bit of business advisory type stuff. But because he shifted the value, he could shift his pricing. So stop thinking that your prospects are price orientated. There are a few that will be, absolutely, but majority are not. And start thinking that they are value orientated, because that is absolutely true. Second one has to do with perception. And start with a question here, so how much is the value you bring to the table? And that's a question you've got to find the answer to, not just from your perspective, but also from the prospect's or the client's perspective. Very, very important, this one. It's about the value that you bring to the table, and therefore what they gain from that. for me, this is absolutely true. You know, I took my car, I remember a few years ago, I took my car in for no, I had a client many years ago, a client who is a car mechanic. And I remember him and me having this debate about, he was coming from a perspective of when he charges for the car service, it's all based on hourly charge because he's got these people working on it, those people, and based on how much he pays them per hour, he was working out how much his car service would then be. And I thought, for me as somebody taking my car in for a service, I've never asked, what is your hourly rate when you do a car service. I didn't even comprehend that somebody could do that. It's just, well, I'm bringing my car in for a service, he has a price for it, and that's such as life. The concept that there's hourly billing sitting behind that price, it doesn't even cross my mind. And a lot of us are trapped into that, it's about how many hours we put in this, but we don't sell time. We sell value. And that's value as perceived by the client. So the second mindset shift is therefore stop thinking that you're selling time and start thinking constantly that you are selling value. It's always about value. And value will differ from one person to the next, but it is about value. It's not about time. Okay, third one. I totally believe that time-based billing is inefficient. And it actually promotes inefficiency. Because at some level, there's this whole thing of, at some level, the more I bill for this, or the more hours I put into it, the potentially the more money I'm going to make if the client would pay it. And there's always a thing that comes up as well. If you charge, let's say that the rate is £50 an hour, and we tell a client it's going to take 10 hours for this job, they're always going to hope that it takes less, and you're always going to hope it takes more. And that's partly why they always want a cheaper price, because there's this negotiation going on at some level. And so for me, when it comes to time-based billing, it is inefficient. I very much believe that we should log our time, but that is done from an efficiency management perspective internally as opposed to an external thing. But that's the third concept for me there. Now see, as opposed to time-based billing, value-based billing works in the opposite way. It promotes efficiency for both you and the client. So, just as an example, if I can save you up to £100,000 in tax and my fee is 10%, in other words, the harder I work to get that 100,000, and therefore the more I get paid. But again, this works just as well as in compliance. And actually reminds me of Jeremy, the client I spoke about earlier. I remember that where he also went in for, it was another job where he went to quote 2,500 for the job, and then they worked on with him and the client. They worked on the whole value proposition, explained exactly what they could do for the client, and they broke it down into little chunks, and then they ended up quoting £8,000 for that actual job, which they also won. So it's really about ensuring the value is very clear to the client of everything they'd be getting. And then it will end up in a win-win for both ways. Because even the job that was quoted for £8,000, eventually the client came back and they had a bit of negotiation and grumbled, but the client settled on £6,500, which far exceeds the original £2,500. And it was a win-win both ways, because the client was happy and so was the accountant. So stop thinking time-based billing and start thinking value-based billing. And that's the third mindset shift. Okay, number 4 here, very important I think. As I change, it changes. And you might be thinking, how do I do this? how do I get the organization to change? How do I get the employees to buy in? You know, we've been doing this like this for years, since forever. And the reality is, it has to start at the top. Your organization is a mirror of you. And as you change, it changes. And that's why even in my program I work with managing partners with, it's pretty much only the individual at the top, maybe a few other partners that I work with, because the change has to start at the top. And as those individuals learn the knowledge and start implementing step by step, as they start changing, it starts changing the whole organization. It's phenomenal to see. Okay, so that's fourth and final mindset shift. Therefore, stop thinking that it can't change and start thinking change is absolutely possible. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to price. I remember the other day I saw an article and it mentioned 20 different ways, 20 different hybrids of pricing. But I reckon there are three main ways. So let's go through these. So there's an hourly way, there's menu pricing, and there's value pricing. I think that's the core of the three main ways. So let's have a look at these. So hourly, we tend to log our time, and what often happens is that we put too much time against the client, so we have this write-off, and inefficiency has an impact on our profit margins. Menu pricing, typically we'll have come up with some kind of solution for, this is a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, or gold, silver, bronze, whatever you want to call it, or we're using some kind of pricing software there. And what tends to happen there is that there are upfront agreements, this is agreed way upfront of what the price is going to be. And actually, if we've quoted, I don't know, let's say £1,000 for a job, clients agreed, if we've got the systems in place, we can push our staff to get that job done in £600, which means we're actually left with a write-on. It leads to efficiency and an increase in profit margins. So let's look at value pricing. Now, to get this right, what we really need is something that we've got for our boardroom, our black belt clients, is what I call a value pricing calculator. So it's a sheet you fill in that takes you through a mental process to get to the right value. And also, what's very important is how we convey that message to our client, to our prospect. And for that, we need a value pricing script. So it can guide us into getting to the right place where the client is happy to accept that value pricing. And what we get here is typically massive write-on and massive profit margins as well. So again, actually this is the image of Jeremy Harbinson Mulholland, non-partner firm, and Jeremy is the one in the top left-hand corner there. So, interested to know, what are your biggest takeaways from that section? What have you learned? What have you noticed? What would you like to share? So, go ahead and type in there. We'd love to know what's been your biggest takeaway from that bit there. So, okay. Need to practice value pricing. Yeah, and it is a matter of practicing, David, you're quite right. Once you've got the process and the system for how to do it, then it's a matter of practicing until you get it. Because it's also partly a confidence thing. John says value pricing, refocus sales literature to focus on output, not cost. Absolutely. Edith says, why do we have write-offs with menu pricing? Edith, that's a very good question. Let's keep that for the Q&A section at the end. So please bring that question and all your other questions as well to the Q&A at the end, and I'll get that answered for you. The answers are probably quite simple and fairly easy to overcome as well. So, good. Okay, Fantastic. So right now I'm interested in you because I could just give you this knowledge and you go, you nod your head and go yes, yes, yes. At the end of this, you switch off from this and life happens because you're in this raging torrent of a river that's just flowing, 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 busy, busy, busy. And that's why this next slide is actually quite an important one. Where are you and what's the long-term results if you stay where you are? So in other words, in this relation to shift from hoping for growth to predictable growth, and we just covered one small element of that, for a lot of us, we're in the hope phase, doing what we're doing, the hope to predictable. So where are you now? Would you say that you're more in the hope phase or more towards a predictable phase? And also, what's the long-term result if you stay where you are? So go ahead, type it in there. Are you in the more towards the hopes phase or more towards the predictable phase? And what is the long-term result if you stay there? Okay, hope, hope, hope. Yeah. Starting the shift towards predictable. Good. Okay. Yeah. Interesting one. And the question for yourself is, long-term result if you stay where you are. Paul, you've clearly got a massive sense of humor, which I love, but it comes long-term equals unhappy wife. Yeah. And I guess that's a kind of a summary of a wider concept. But yeah, if we stay where we are, we stick on this treadmill, and eventually when I'm in my late 60s, somebody's going to carry me off there in a coffin off this treadmill. So, yeah, interesting one. And planned growth, getting clients is not a problem, but we have issues with servicing. Okay. Now, when you switch to predictable growth, when you do that, everything gets easier. And that is what I want for you. So my job today is to help you make 3 or 4 really smart decisions. So right now you've got a choice to make. You can keep on hoping for growth, being stressed out with loads to do, always wanting one or more clients, or you can make a decision, draw a line in the sand and say, I need to make our growth predictable. And my question to you is, what is it going to be? So I'm going to give you 5 seconds right now. Make a choice. And I don't care what you choose. It's your practice, your business, your life. It's not mine. Now, obviously, I think that predictable growth is going to get you the results you want, but I need you to make a choice. As I said, my job today is to help you make 3 or 4 smart decisions. And the first decision, we're going to keep hoping for growth or make it predictable. Okay. Predictable. Yeah, predictable. Good. And this really is, it's about making a decision. Nothing happens until you make a decision. Great. Okay, fantastic. And that's how you price your practice for profit. Focus your time on A+ clients and get outsourcing right first time around. We're going to cover soon as well. So let's look at this shift number 2. And this is where we're going from over-reliant team to self-reliant team. And Edith, I know you've been asking a few questions about team stuff, so this section is going to be more relevant to some of your questions. Now see, if we've got an over-reliant team as opposed to self-reliant team, it always comes back to me. They can't really do without me, and if I'm not there, the place eventually falls apart. So in our black belt program, on this corner of the triangle, again, we've got 4 big keys to make the shift from over-reliant to self-reliant team. So key 1 is all about staff. And what exactly is a profitable model? What does that look like? How do we go about recruiting A+ players? And how do we navigate outsourcing? Key number 2 is to do with staff management. So how do we maximize the management? How do we get a team meeting rhythm going? It's very important. It's the heartbeat of your organization. And how do I actually delegate effectively so people pay attention and do what they say they're going to do? Very simple to do. Key number 3, time management is a big, big concern for most of us. So how do I drive my diary? How do I eliminate lower level tasks? And ultimately, how do I end up working less? Because when I work less in the practice, and I have time to think, that's when I actually start making money. And key number 4 is all around productivity. How do we go about terminating distractions? How do I filter emails? And how do we maximize results? And just going back to this recruiting A-plus players, for me, that is a non-negotiable. You know, if I'm going for the Olympic gold, I need an A-plus team behind me. It's okay to have a B or a C team behind you, but just recognize you're not going for the Olympic gold. And in that case, if it's your choice to have a B or a C team behind you, stop whinging. Because you'll always be on the treadmill, you'll always work long hours, it's always going to come back on your shoulders until you have an A-plus team behind you and all the other systems around them as well. But, okay, so one of the keys we're looking at today is how we go about navigating outsourcing. So, maybe you've tried outsourcing before, maybe you haven't. And you've heard people raving about the benefits, but you're just not sure what to do or how it works. So, and maybe you're worried about wasting time and money. You don't want to be scammed. Maybe you want to try it and you want to get it right the first time. So let's just have a quick look here. Who is currently already using outsourcing? Is anyone in our audience here this morning already using outsourcing? Raise your hands or just type into the chat box here if you already are using outsourcing. Okay. So I tried several times, didn't manage to get it right. John says yes, payroll recently. Great. Okay, fantastic. And Tim says I've tried a few times but didn't work out. Great. I'm glad there's a few people on here who've tried it already and it hasn't worked. And John, you just dipping your toes into it. Excellent. Tim says they took 16 hours to do a few hours job. Fantastic. Okay, Tim, you've come to the right place because I'm going to explain to you how to get this right and the mistakes that people make in outsourcing. Because this is phenomenal when you get it right. Okay, so let's just go through the slides here. Let me not jump the queue. If you don't get outsourcing right first time around, then you're going to have upset staff, including yourself. You could potentially upset your clients, and you'll be scared of getting it wrong. If you do get outsourcing right first time around, then your staff become excited and they get behind you because this thing's actually working. Your clients are even more satisfied because we're servicing them even better. And you're successfully using outsourcing, which does have a bottom line improvement impact when done correctly. Okay, I'm going to skip this one because the answer here, when you do it right, it's going to hit your bottom line, makes you more efficient. In times when it's really busy, you can turn on a tap, and when times when it's not so busy, you can turn off that tap. Okay, so in order to get outsourcing right first time around, let's take a look at the 3 biggest mistakes people typically make and how you avoid them. So, mistake number 1 is not having a dedicated champion for this project. And that dedicated champion is not you. As a partner, you cannot be this champion person because your time is, you're all over the place. You haven't got the dedicated singular focus for this. But we do need a project manager for this. And the person that we pick needs to have sufficient authority that they are the middle person between them and us. So that's the first mistake a lot of people make. So they don't pick one specific champion. So how can you avoid making this mistake? Well, you nominate a person in your organization. You give them a full brief of what you want. You set clear targets and goals. And you also hold them accountable using the who, what, when triangle. And I'm not going to explain to you right now what that is. If you want more information, that's explained in my book as well, so get a copy of that. But hold them accountable. So champion is very important. It's a person in the middle between us and them. It's only one single person. Person who's got enough authority to run the ball, and a good communicator as well. The second biggest mistake, or mistake number 2, is that there's no feedback loop. And this is vitally important. And you know what? You're likely going to be working with people on the other side of the world. So open communication is extremely important. So feedback loop. Well, let me explain to you how you can avoid that. Because that goes back to what Tim was saying, that took 16 hours to do a job that should only take a few hours. So the feedback loop from Tim to them would have been, hey, this should have taken 3 hours for this job. I'm not accepting the fact that you took 16 hours. And that's a feedback loop, that open communication. So how do we avoid this? You set a regular communication with your outsourcing company. Maybe that's once a week, but definitely anytime something is not working, there's got to be instant feedback. No, we're not happy with this, and I'll try again. And you keep on going back, no, we're not happy with this, and they will adjust and change until you're happy with it. And once you're happy with it, then you let it through. So it's being a little pig-headed and saying, no, not happy with this, that's great, this is good, not happy with this here, change it. So there's a constant feedback. And continually saying, what worked, what didn't work, what are the bottlenecks, what do we implement going forward to make this better? Because it's a massive learning curve you go through in the initial phase. So feedback loop, constantly giving feedback until you're happy, and you don't stop giving feedback until you are happy. Because really, it's a bit like puppy training. When I get a new puppy in my house, it's going to do its business in my house, which I don't want. So I pick up the puppy and I run outside. And this afternoon, guess what it's going to do again? It's trying to have a wee in the house. I'm like, no, no, no. And I pick it up and I run outside. And I've got to keep on doing that puppy training until eventually the puppy gets to the point that if it wants to do its business, it needs to get out the house. That takes time, but it's a continuous, instant feedback loop. And the same with our outsourcers. They need that continuous feedback until they've been puppy trained. Does it take time? Of course it does. Will they eventually get it? Absolutely. Okay, third one. Most people are not patient enough. Now, I will tell you now, without a doubt, the process of starting to work with an outsourcing firm is going to take you somewhere between 6 to 9 months. In other words, this puppy training phase, it's going to take roughly that time. So getting to month 2 with you not having given feedback loop saying, oh, it's not working, yes, but if you do these things, if you have had a champion in place who does continuous feedback, and you acknowledge it's going to take, puppy training is going to take 6 to 9 months, I promise you, this absolutely should work. If you've gone through those steps and it's still not working, you are working with the wrong company, and you should have clicked on that much sooner. How do you click onto that much sooner? If the communication isn't working, if you're giving them feedback and they're just blatantly ignoring you, then they're the wrong company for you. Move to another company. But if we have a champion in place, we are continuously giving them feedback and they're reacting positively and making the changes as requested, 6 to 9 months, you will have that working like a machine beautifully. So how to avoid this? Be patient. Remember, allow at least 6 months for the whole system to get up running properly, because we've got to get used to what they want and how it works on our side. They've got to get used to us and what we're looking for on their side. And if we persist through this, at some point we will have this machine just working beautifully. Here's one of our clients, Elena. When I met Elena, she was literally working all hours of the day and just never catching up. And the thought of her growing a practice, it wasn't exactly at the forefront of her mind. Now, fair enough, over time she's worked on all three of these strategic shifts, but specifically on time and using this tool, it's completely transformed the way she works. And Elena now literally does 4 days a week instead of what used to be 24/7. And now she has time to think about growing her practice too. And I know she's just recently moved offices into bigger offices, taking on more staff. It's going really well for her. And it is a simple thing that makes a difference. Because when you so run off your feet, you're constantly with your head under the water, busy drowning. You don't have time to think about the simple and the obvious. So, I'd love to know, what have been your biggest takeaways from that section? What did you learn? What did you notice? And I'd love to know from those of you who say we've tried it in the past and it didn't work, were some of those perhaps mistakes that you think, maybe that was true for me at the time? So go ahead and just type in there, from that section, what did you learn? What are your biggest takeaways there? Go ahead and type that in there. Okay, so Edith says 3 out of 3 mistakes. Pretty simple. And and Tim says need patience to give the process 6 to 9 months. And that's what I love about what I do for a living. Because just like that, in a few minutes, I've given you, these are the mistakes that I promise you are going to happen. This is how you avoid them. And it stops people from having to reinvent the wheel. Ah, John, interesting one that you're saying here. John says, this is not a route that our clients would appreciate. They want personal service. Absolutely 100% agree with you. And it's very rare that the outsourcing firm, well, it's dependent on what you want, but it's very rare that the outsourcing firms will work directly with your clients. And the model we want to get to, by giving, let's call it the lower level work away from our staff in our office to staff in another office, what that allows our staff in our office to have is more time, which means they can actually spend more time with your clients. So by doing this, and remember, the work comes through your people. So you've got your customer-facing people, and they are the people that deal with your clients. Your clients only deal with them. All the work, that gets done elsewhere, but and profitably so as well, at higher profits. But because your staff aren't just locked into having to do the work all the time, they're doing different work. But because they have more time, they're actually able to spend more time with your clients. And then when you put in a customer service process, it's phenomenal what it can do for you. So, John, just an observation and an awareness. We can still use it, and actually what it does for us is it makes us even better. Because it's very rare that, unless you specifically ask that they deal with your clients, but that's extremely rare, they will normally only deal with your internal staff, and it's your client-facing staff, client-facing managers that deal with your clients. Okay, good. Let's move on to the next bit here. Okay, so let's look at this again. So I'm interested in you. So in relation to the shift from dependent team to self-reliant team, where are you now? And again, what's the long-term result if you stay where you are? Would you say you're more towards the self-reliant or more towards the, let's look at these two, sorry, more the over-reliant or more the self-reliant? So go ahead and just type that one in there. Would you say you're more towards the over-reliant or more towards the self-reliant? More towards over, more towards self. Fantastic. Great. Over. Good. So, when you switch from over-reliant team to self-reliant team, when you do that, when you've got all the systems in place, you've got your A+ team behind you, everything gets easier. And that is what I want for you, because once you can tick this corner on that initial triangle, it's another corner that you've ticked that moves you closer towards essentially building this machine that will give you your freedom. So again, right now you've got a choice to make. You can keep on having an overly dependent team, always working in the practice and forever playing catch-up, or you can make a decision, draw a line in the sand and say, I need to make my team become self-reliant. So for those of you who are still towards the over-reliant side, what's it going to be? I'm going to give you 5 seconds, make a choice. And again, I don't care what you choose. It's your business, not mine. And obviously, I think that self-reliant team is going to get you the results you want, but I want you to make a choice. So go ahead and type in there. Good. Okay. Moving towards self-reliant. Fantastic. And again, so that's how you price your practice for profit, focus your time on A+ clients, and get outsourcing right first time round. So absolutely, outsourcing is definitely worth it. It's worth playing with it initially, just seeing how it goes, do a few trial jobs, and then take it from there, because it can work really beautifully. Okay, let's look at this third shift now. And this is going from sweat systems or sweaty systems to scalable systems. So instead of it always coming back onto your shoulders, your systems are scalable. You know, the practice is streamlined and there's space for growth. And this is an interesting one for me. I was speaking to a new client of mine, and it's interesting. This man is a sole proprietor, sole practitioner, and his practice is turning over 1.2 million, and just under that, just under half of that is profit. So we look at this and say, well, why in the world would this man want to become a client of mine? And it's interesting, like he says, you know, growth is not his problem. He's got plenty of that. But he's in a situation where he's working 7 days a week. Now, he's probably a bit of a workaholic in any case, but it is getting a bit much. So he's come to me and said, really, this is great. I want to grow my practice, but I'm already working 7 days a week. I need to cut back down that. If I could work 5 days a week, I'd be over the moon, excited and happy. So his team he essentially has got an A+ team, but it's this whole side we're going to touch on now, the system side of things, that's going to make one of the biggest impacts for him. So let's take a look at this now. So again, in our Black Belt program, we've got 4 keys here to make this shift happen and to be able to tick this box or this corner of the triangle. So key 1 is the systems around lockup. So how do we decrease our debtors? How do we work our work in progress? And then systemizing the whole lockup. Key number 2 is customer service. This is a massive, massive, massive key that very few accounting firms have got, and it's just so easy to do. So key number 2 is grade the clients, onboard them effectively, and maximize satisfaction. Key number 3 has to do with KPIs. How do we measure them efficiently? How do we direct accordingly and track it frequently? And really, I guess key 3 numbers, or this key here, KPIs, could almost sit under staffing as well on your A+ team, but we've brought it into here as, hey, this is a system you've got to follow. And key number 4, practice management and technology, you know, systemizing frequently, paperless office, and leveraging the cloud and using the technology because it exists. So the key what we're going to do today is drilling deeply down into how you can grade your clients so that you and your team spend time with the right clients. And it's very interesting for me because a lot of accountants that I ask, you know, have you already graded your clients? Often the answer will be, well, it wouldn't take long to do, or we've got a rough idea, and have we actually done it? Not exactly, because once you grade your clients, there's a logic that flows from that. Very, very important. Okay, so I'm taking it, most of us have heard of the Pareto principle, you know, the 80-20 rule, and the same applies with our clients. You know, you end up spending 80% of your time working with the clients who only provide 20% of your revenues. And often the smaller clients, they're not necessarily worth the recurring fees, but they drain your and your team's time and energy. Which goes back to the whole thing of, it means only 20% of your time is spent working with the clients who back the other 80% of your revenues. And those are your A-plus clients. So what we want to do is go through a process where we identify the 20% and systematically ensure that we're spending more time working with them. And what does that do? It's great for cross-selling, it creates more referrals, raving testimonials, and much more. I'm going to skip that question for right now, just from a time perspective. Now, if you don't grade your clients properly, then we're focusing our time on the wrong clients, and our staff are wasting time on those wrong clients. This goes back to what the airlines do. There's business class, economy plus economy. And the different classes are treated in different ways, and they pay different prices as well. Our best clients don't feel extra special because essentially, barring a little bit of tender loving care, they essentially treat like everyone else. They don't get that special extra bit. And also, if we've not graded our clients, what it means is we're inefficient. You're spending the wrong amount of time in the wrong places for the least reward, absolutely without a doubt, if we haven't gone through this process. So if we do grade our clients properly, what it does is it focuses our staff time on the right clients. Your best clients feel truly special, which leads to selling more services, more referrals, and raving testimonials. And this means that you're efficient. You spend the right amount of time in the right places to get the greatest results. I'm going to skip this one again from a time perspective here, but a good question for yourself. So let me share with you this 4-step client grading process that our black belt clients use. Step 1 is define your grades clearly. So in other words, what are our grades? We're going to have an A+, A, B, C, D. And to be in a specific grade, what does that mean? What do we grade them on? Is it profit? How long it takes to work with them? Do we enjoy working with them? Do they pay us? Whatever it might be, decide what those criteria are. And so define your grades. Now, again, for our black belt clients, we give them a pre-done spreadsheet to say, here are the criteria in the columns. Put your clients in here. Give them a rating from 0 to 5. It adds up the total and averages this, and literally in fairly quick, they're graded. Okay, so that's the first step, define the grades clearly. Then we rank them from best to worst. And again, don't overthink the answers. I've had people spend months on this exercise when literally it could take a couple of hours, done. So don't overthink the answers. Go with your gut feel. The first number that pops into your head for each client is what you go with. So you rank them from best to worst. Now, I'll say the very top, the A+ clients, maximum of 20. If you've got more than 20 A+ clients, cut it down. Maximum of 20 or less, because they're the ones that you're going to truly focus on. And step 4, highlight and address the bottom 20%. These are probably the 20% that are taking up 80% of your time, and choose what you can do with them. Do you fire them? Do you increase their rates to justify the time spent with you? Often a way to fire them is to increase their prices quite dramatically, and some of them will stay with those increased prices and some will go, and that's fine. And actually what often happens is that the ones that stay with the increased prices, that increased bit counterbalances the ones you lose. But also the ones you lose creates more space to take on more of the right clients. So that is the process of grading them. Once we've graded them, we've got a grade, then we've got to decide what is our customer service level for each grade. But that's the next step. First step is just grade them and get rid of the ones that really shouldn't be there. Okay, what would truly happen if you find your bottom 20%? You'd probably end up being happier. Here is another example of a client of mine, and Jonathan Grant went through a very interesting process where he, very strong-willed, decided to fire, well, essentially all he has is A-plus clients. For him, if a client doesn't turn over, I don't know, about £10,000 a year, or so not turnover, revenue for him, £10,000 a year, or the potential to get there fairly quickly, he won't actually take them on as clients. So he says no to a lot of people, but it's interesting what he attracts. And with a pretty small team, he has a hugely profitable practice, and they give fantastic elite service to their clients. Brilliant. So from this section, what would you say has been your biggest takeaways from there? What did you learn, notice, or want to share? Go ahead and type that in there for us. And whilst you're typing that, I'll just quickly go through those steps again. Okay. So go ahead and type in there, what did you notice? It'd be interesting to know as well if you've already done this exercise yourself on your clients. Interesting one here. Paul says, I just realized how many bad clients I have. And David's got a very interesting one here. He says, I have fired my bottom 20%, and I sleep much better, but it's hard to find the A to A plus clients to replace them. And David, I'm guessing, on the triangle of the one corner is team, the other corner is systems, and then the third corner is the growth side of things, which includes increasing pricing, but also what is our marketing process, what is our sales process. If we're finding it hard to replace our A-plus clients, I'm going to take a wild guess at the fact that in the practice we probably don't yet have a written down tactical marketing plan that we're implementing step by step. And that bit of knowledge that's not in your head of, well, I don't know how to do this bit, is what will hold you back. Yeah, that's just something. It's the marketing process I suck at. Well, of course, as accountants, we taught the technical bits on accounting, and the whole process of marketing, how we do that. And again, it's one of the things that we cover with our black belt clients, because it's an essential part of, once you've got the other foundations covered, how do we grow this thing? And that's what allowed the client I spoke about earlier, Paul, to go, I don't know, 3-4 years from 1.5 million to 5 million now and still growing. And that's through organic growth and the whole process there, but also the acquisitions now that he's ready for it. Good. Yes, several times, don't let them stay. Okay, fantastic. Good stuff there. So, right now I guess interest in you. In relation to the shift from sweat systems to scalable systems, where are you now, and what's the long-term result if you stay there? Go ahead and type it in for us. So, sweat or scalable. Okay, so when you switch to scalable systems, and when you do that, everything gets easier. And in my world, that is what I want for every one of my clients. That's what I want for you. And again, right now you've got a choice to make. You can keep having sweaty systems. Everything is done ad hoc, it's disorganized. Or you make a decision and draw a line in the sand and say, I need to make my system scalable. So again, what's it going to be? Take 5 seconds, make a choice. And making a decision is really important. Again, I don't care what choice you make. It's your business, not mine. Now, obviously, I believe that scalable systems will get you the results you want, but it's about you making the choice. So, scalable. Good. Scalable. Great. Good choice. Fantastic. Okay. And again, that's how you price your practice for profit. Focus your time on A-plus clients and get outsourcing right first time around without having to reinvent the wheel. Okay. So let's have a quick recap here. I believe that it's a fact that you've been set up to fail. No one's deliberately trying to ruin our lives. And I totally believe it's a fact that the system you either bought or the thinking you bought into when you learned to become an accountant and saw what everyone else was doing, it set you up to fail. And this limits you in 3 areas. It limits your team, your systems, and your growth. And ultimately, this does affect the amount of money and time you take from your business. So a recap of these 3 strategic shifts. There's the hoping for growth to predictable growth. And David, this is the shift that wants to be a focus for you, that you master this one. Because when you master this one, you're home free. Shift number 2, overreliant team, and shifting that to self-reliant team. And number 3 is going from sweaty systems to scalable systems. I'm going to just skip this one for now. So I just want to have a quick recap here on earlier. So we've seen this going from employed to self-employed. So saying, the whole process that majority of my clients are in is shifting from the self-employed quadrant to the business owner quadrant. And if we had a ranking 0 to 10, where 0 is self-employed and 10 is fully in the business owner quadrant, about to make the jump to the investor quadrant, a lot of my clients are sitting there somewhere between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on that quadrant, on that red line there. And it's about really getting the knowledge of how do I fully get into the business owner quadrant. Because once I've done that, then I can truly make this final jump to freedom. So hey, I just want to quickly share with you, for those of you, I said right up front that, I'll share all this knowledge with you, and then at the end, I've got a system I want to share with you for those of you who are interested in this. So what this is, if you're currently in an employed level employee, then the next step wouldn't be for you. Also, in the self-employed quadrant, if your turnover is currently less than 150,000, this next step is not for you. If your turnover is currently less than 150, I've got plenty of free type events or cheap events for you that you could come to and stay engaged with them. Read my book, come to these webinars, because we always have different things on them. There's the blogs on a weekly basis on the website, the seminar next week in Manchester if you can make it. Lots of things to come to. But that's at the less than 150K. If your turnover is in that range, between 150K and roughly 3 million at the top, then I want to share with you some next steps that might be really useful for you. And that is, the offer is there, come and have a 20-minute telephone conversation with me. And in that conversation, book yourself in for that if you want to. What I'll do with you in that conversation is that I'll ask lots of questions, and we'll discover the number one thing that's stopping you from building the practice that you want. And then we'll identify the next best steps that will move you to the place that you want to be. And you leave that session with the confidence of knowing exactly what to do in order to implement the practice growth blueprint. And this call with me is completely free of charge. There's no, I'm hoping you will sign up to my program. None of that. I absolutely promise you I will spend the time with you, ask a lot of questions, give you some ideas. If a next step happens, if it's the right thing to do, it goes there. If not, absolutely no problem. So to get yourself booked into that, there's the website, acoa.co.uk/session. And then you'll land on that page you see in the background there, where you book yourself into my diary. And I'll spend 20-30 minutes with you on the phone and really one-on-one with you, give you ideas to help you. So here's just some examples of some other clients of mine. Actually, there at the top left-hand side, Paul Corbell. Turnover's trebled, staff numbers have doubled. I now work 3 days a week, take 10 weeks plus holiday a year. There's Aline next to him. With 3 days help, our practice went from unorganized chaos to complete control in less than 60 days. There are 3 partners. Jeremy is in the right-hand corner. Ashley, one partner. And there's a whole range of clients there. So those are examples of people who have been through the process or are still in the process. So if it's of interest to you, then get yourself booked in for a session. I can help you one-on-one with this. So we're going to jump into the Q&A, and you can ask me any questions about the session with me, any of the content we've covered today, or anything about how you can get your practice to move up. So I've got a few more minutes. I'm at your service. And if you've got to go, then, hey, thank you very much for attending. Please keep interacting with me. I look forward to connecting with you at our next webinar in a few weeks' time. And I know with some of you it's at the seminar next week, and that'll be great to meet you face-to-face as well. So all you've got to do now is type in your question, give me plenty of detail, and we can look at getting it answered for you. And Edith, if you're still on here, let me see if you, yeah, you're still on here. So Edith, I know you had quite a number of questions coming up through the process. And I said, well, hang on, wait till the end. So if you want to go ahead and type in some of your questions now, now's a good time for it. And also for all the others who are still on the call, go ahead and type in any questions. It could be about the content we covered today or anything else. And if I can answer it, I will do my best to do so. Okay, question on marketing. So for me, marketing, I'll give you an example. I had a client a few weeks ago, and he's starting this all, actually, I'll just shift the screen here, just so you've got that there as well. So on the marketing, so a client a few weeks ago, well, actually, let me backtrack slightly earlier. I've got two very small kids, and one of the things that I'm constantly drumming into their heads is the concept of team, plan, do. I'm forever saying to them, team, plan, do. So they've got to go and tidy up their playroom, and I say, okay, so Jess, who's your team? My sister Holly. Okay, great. What is your plan for tidying up this playroom? We're going to split it in half, and she's going to do that half, I'm going to do this half. Great. Okay, now you start doing. Now, what most of us do is that we travel through life and we just jump straight into do. The team bit and the plan bit we often miss. We just start doing. And that's why one of the things that I'm drumming into my kids from a very young age, team, plan, do, team, plan, do. Doesn't matter what you do in life, who's your team, what's your plan before you start doing. So a few weeks ago, I had a client starting on his marketing process. Now, because he's got the foundations in there, and now the marketing is the next step. And he sent me an email saying, well, I'm starting to do, I can't remember what his specific activities were, but he's doing a bit of this, he's doing a bit of PR, and he's doing that and that. So I went back to him and I said, so tell me, I know we're in the doing phase here, have you got a plan? He's like, plan? No, not really, I'm just doing stuff. So I said, wait, pause. So I gave him the what we call the tactical marketing plan template that we use. And really, essentially, it's a bit more than this, but at its basic essence, it's a spreadsheet where we list down the one side in a column all the activities we're going to do, and then the columns are per month. And for each month, we have a plan and an actual. So, I don't know, let's say networking as an example. So the activity will be networking. My plan for networking in the month of March is 4 networking events. End of March, I'll go and I'll say, well, I only went to 2. And April, I'll say, well, my target for April would be 3. April comes, I actually went to 4. So whatever it might be. So we need this. These are the list of activities or things we're going to be doing. This is a plan. You can do that plan for the whole 12 months. And then by month, you start tracking activities. And this is a very simple overview, big picture plan, incredibly powerful as a starting point. So that is where a tactical marketing plan wants to start, because you need this one place where it's all in one place. Okay, so we've got here Praveen saying, where are the best countries to outsource? Praveen, the best countries, I know of outsourcers in India, I know of outsourcers in the Philippines, I know of outsourcers in South Africa. I think at the end of the day, there's 2 questions. What is the price is one, but more importantly also, have they got experience? Have they done this before? Have they got testimonials of others they're working with? And, if the price was right, I wouldn't care if they sat next door to me as my neighbor or on another part of the planet. It's a matter of just doing the research and finding where you want to go. I personally have people in Pakistan, India, and Philippines. My VA is based in the Philippines. So it's a range, but it's a matter of doing the research. Okay, some questions here from Edith, a whole list of questions. Can you turn an existing member into A+, or do you start again? Edith, the simple formula that I've put together for this, there's a formula to figure out if somebody is A+. And that formula is, in capital letters, A plus A equals A+. The first A stands for attitude. The second one for ability equals A+. Now what we do is a gut feel range between 0 and 10 for attitude, a 0 to 10 for ability, and then we get an average of those two numbers. And my rule of thumb is that if somebody scores less than 8 as an average, then I've got to ask myself the question, why is this person in my team? So what you do is you take an A4 page, you write that formula at the top, and then you list the names down the left-hand side, and this is not a deep thinking exercise, it's a gut feel exercise. So you go for Rudy attitude, I'll give him a 6, ability, 3, 6 and 3, average is, I don't know, what is it, 4.5. Oh, why is this person in my team? Melanie, attitude 9, ability in that role, 6 equal the, whatever that is, 7.5. And so we make that listing. And for me, I've found over the years that when it comes to those two, attitude and ability, if I have low scoring people in attitude, so that's less than 8, then the question I've got to ask myself is, do I want to pay you for the next 10 years whilst you might decide to shift your attitude? And also, it only takes one rotting apple in the cart to destroy the entire cart. So for me, people with low attitude number, it's a non-negotiable. Essentially, there is a door, and I'm going to work you out of here. It's not the place for you. Ability, there tends to be two places where people fall down on that one. Number one, it's either I've got a square peg in a round hole type thing, so I've got the right person for my organization, they're just in the wrong role. So either I move them into the right role, or I move them out the door. As nice as they are, I've got a right place for them, or I don't. So that's the square peg in the round hole type thing. Now, I said that, and it sounds very harsh, and obviously we do it gentler, much gentler, but that's the essence of what's going to happen there. The other thing on ability is, if it's a low ability number, it's a training thing. Now, I've got the right person in the right role, but they don't quite know what they're doing. It's a training issue. And that sits squarely on my shoulders as the owner of the business. I've got to sit down with this team member and figure out what do they need training on, and then ensure that they get that training so that we can increase that number. So going back to your question then, can you turn an existing member into A+? No, I don't believe that unless it's a training thing, typically you don't turn people into A+. They either are or they're not. At its very most generalized essence there, okay? Or do you start again? More often than not, you start again. I feel like I tried, but the mindset is not coming. Yes. This sounds really harsh, I know, but if it's not working, it's not working. Move on. Another question from Edith, why are write-offs on menu pricing happening? It relates back to your B or C team you've got, is a big element there. Another element there is probably poor planning per job. So another worksheet that we have for our black belt clients is before any job starts, there's a document that we work through to plan the document. And then at the end of the job, we review that job and we look at what were our learnings so we can change our systems and make things better. So I'm guessing if you've got write-offs, it's got to do with your bad team and bad systems. So bad planning before job starts. And then the accountability to say, wait, hang on, this is not on. What is my view on offshoring versus outsourcing? It's really, which wine do I prefer? Do I prefer red wine or white wine? It depends on me personally. So offshoring or outsourcing, they can both work. It's your choice. Go play with all of it. Give it a go. Great. Okay, that seems to be all the questions for this morning. Good. Okay. So hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on this morning's presentation. Like I said, if you want to have a one-on-one session with me, book yourself in there, and I'll spend 20, 30 minutes with you on the phone, helping you specifically with whatever your challenge is. So bye for now. Have yourself a fantastic day and rest of the week.